All right, everyone. Welcome to our Week 1 edition of WeTalkSports. We're going to recap all of the games from this week in the NFL and give a few thoughts from a fantasy sports perspective as well. So we're going to hop right in and start with Game 1, which was last Thursday, Cowboys and Eagles. Eagles were the defending champions, celebrating at home, getting the banner. Cowboys just traded Micah Parsons, and everybody assumed this was going to be a blowout. But Cowboys' new coaching staff with Schottenheimer under helm there looked pretty competent. Cowboys kept the game close. A couple of CeeDee Lamb drops late in the game on tough throws. Could have changed the outcome, but 24-20 Eagles win. My takeaway there is the Cowboys might be more competent than I was expecting. Dak Prescott is going to be a potentially good fantasy quarterback, and also CeeDee Lamb could have had a monster game that won a lot of matchups this week if he had made those catches late in the game. For the Eagles offense, I'm a little worried. Their wide receivers did nothing. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith did nothing. Their offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, is now the head coach of the Saints. And so we're going to have to see how the Eagles offense shapes up. Jalen Hurts, of course, did well. Saquon Barkley did decently, but certainly wasn't like it was last year. So we're going to take a look and see how that progresses over time. I'm joined here with Sam. Sam has a few notes and thoughts he wants to share about the game. So, Sam, what do you want to talk about with the Eagles-Cowboys?
Well, Jalen Carter got ejected on the opening kickoff, and I believe he's getting fined $57,000. And the Eagles just right after the game traded for Tank Bigsby to be their new backup to Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, smart move, I think, by the Eagles to bolster, trade some lower round draft picks, bolster that running back position. Looks like a good get. I think, Jalen Carter's ejection, Javonte Williams scored a couple touchdowns for the Cowboys, so I think people are wondering, should I go out and get Javonte Williams for fantasy? I don't know. I think he's definitely the lead back there. We'll see if that continues being successful, but it's probably worth speculative at least for the time being, especially if you need some help this week or in the next couple of weeks. All right, we're going to move on to the next game. We had the game down in Brazil on Friday night, Chiefs and Chargers. Chargers win that one 27-21. Interesting note from that game is Justin Herbert went crazy, had a huge game. His reputation has been he's a great quarterback who could do way more than they ask him to do. But we haven't really seen it, and he's had some particular challenges in the playoffs. So they featured him. He threw the ball a ton. He ran the ball a little bit. He made Keenan Allen look like he was still a top wide receiver in the league. Running game wasn't quite as strong as you expected just because they didn't emphasize it. So Marion Hampton, we'll see how he comes along. The Chiefs, they another one tough to take too much out of this game. I think they plan on Xavier Worthy being their focal point of the offense, and he got hurt right away. And they lost that deep weapon that they were hoping for. So it sounds like he's going to be out for a little while, but it's unclear how long. He's going to try to play through the injury with some rehab as opposed to surgery. But if he doesn't play, Hollywood Brown becomes an interesting add at the wide receiver position. So, Sam, any thoughts on the Chargers-Chiefs game?
No.
No? All right. Well, then we'll just move on to the next game that I've got up on my list, which was the Washington Commanders and the New York Giants. Commanders won 21-6. Honestly, the Giants looked terrible with Russell Wilson. I don't know. They're in a tough spot. The coaching staff's going to get fired after the season unless they can magically make the playoffs. They're not making the playoffs with Russell Wilson. I don't think Russell Wilson has been an NFL quarterback since his days on Seattle, and the Giants are the third team to try to figure that out. They just put up no resistance. They put up no offense. Their defense wasn't anything special. Washington sort of, I looked at it as them sleepwalking through the game. I think the big takeaway from that game, from a fantasy perspective, is Deebo Samuel seems like he's going to be used as a deep weapon, in addition to his normal running here and there. So Deebo Samuel, I think, gets a little bit of a bump. I think Bill at running back there, he clearly is their number one option. So you're going to want to go with him at running back if you have a chance to do a waiver claim at that position. But not a whole lot you could take away from the Washington game plan, because they faced a below par opponent, I would say. Sam, what do you think about Washington and the Giants?
I don't really have anything to say. Deebo Samuel looked good, and that's pretty much it.
All right. Let's move on to Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Atlanta Falcons. Tampa Bay goes in, gets a road win, 23-20, and I think Falcons had some opportunities there to win the game, couldn't quite pull it through, and Tampa Bay just kind of hung around and won the game there at the end. They look like a dynamic offense. Looks like they have a rookie wide receiver who's going to be really good for them, Emeka Egbuka. So he's a definite waiver wire ad. Didn't learn too much out of that game. I think, again, the Falcons, really the big concern coming out of that game is Drake London couldn't finish the game with looked like a shoulder injury. If you can't finish the game in crunch time when you're trying to come back, that's going to be potentially a lingering injury. Also, Falcons missed a kick, so they're probably trying out kickers this week. And going to have a new kicker. The game-tying kick from 43 yards was missed. Sam, any additional thoughts on the Bucs and Falcons?
I think Emeka Egbuka looked pretty good, and I think Bijan Robinson is a possible Offensive Player of the Year candidate.
Yeah, if you got him in your fantasy drafts, good job. If you didn't get him and you think you can get him, I'd go for it. He's definitely high floor kind of player every week. We'll see about Drake London. Had high hopes for him. If he's injured, that's going to be tough for them to overcome. All right, let's move on to one of the more surprising games of the weekend. Cincinnati goes into Cleveland and wins 17-16. People came in thinking Cincinnati's offense was going to explode this year, but they have a history of slow starts. Cleveland looked surprisingly competent, and so Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown, all underwhelming, I would say. Chase Brown got a touchdown that saved his day. Generally speaking, though, a defensive battle when you were looking for some offense. Cedric Tillman on the Browns looked pretty good as a wide receiver. They're a muddled mess in terms of all of their different options, and we'll be getting their rookie running back potentially this year. So not too much I could take out of that other than hopefully the Bengals offense can turn things around. What do you got, Sam?
Okay, so I think that the Bengals, of course, they didn't have a great game. The Browns looked pretty decent, though, with Joe Flacco. It looks like the Browns are going to be using their rookie backup tight end, Harold Fannin Jr., a lot in their offense, alongside David Njoku. And, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think you could get by with Joe Flacco, especially if you're in a two-quarterback league or you need him as a bye-week fill-in if he's still starting by that point in the season. I think he's going to put up decent numbers for you. So good analysis there, Sam. All right, let's move on to another surprising game. You had the Dolphins at the Colts. And tale of two teams here. Colts under Daniel Jones. Who expected this? He dominated in ways that haven't been seen in Indianapolis in a long time, bringing back memories of Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. They just moved at will. He was running the ball well. He was throwing the ball well. And then the Dolphins' offense was non-existent. And maybe you give credit to the Colts' defense. Maybe the Colts are just going to be a surprisingly good team all around. But I don't know. I think time's running out on the Tua era in Miami and the Mike McDaniel era. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't throw the ball. They're a mess. I think only thing you can pull out of that game is stay away from the Dolphins for the time being. And some rumors out there that Tyreek Hill could get traded, and be sure interesting to see if he ends up back in Kansas City. That might revive his career a little bit. Sam, what do you got about that game?
So the Dolphins look pretty terrible. I don't think their coach is going to make it through the season. I think he'll for sure get fired in the middle of the season. I wouldn't say it's unlikely for Tyreek Hill to get a trade, as there were some issues at the end of last game. You could see him getting mad on the sidelines during this game. Daniel Jones and the Colts dominated. I believe they scored on every single possession they had. And it might just be that Tua was not doing great and throwing a lot of interceptions, or maybe the Colts are going to be really good this year with Daniel Jones. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I love Tyler Warren at tight end. Gives them a weapon that they really took advantage of. So be curious to see how those two teams go moving forward. We're going to the Raiders-Patriots game, and Raiders win that one 2013. Geno Smith does what Geno Smith does. He threw for a lot of yards, had just one touchdown pass though. But good start on the Raiders Carroll era with Geno Smith there. Ashton Genty did okay, nothing too great. Brock Bowers looked good, but he had a little bit of an injury, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. And then with the Patriots, not sure a little bit about Vrabel's play calling there, and Drake May looked a little bit good at times, not so good at other times. So I'm not going to take a lot out of that game from a fantasy perspective, but I think what you saw there was a veteran coaching staff that knows what they're doing. And honestly, I think even though everybody really loves Vrabel and thinks that he's going to help out New England, I don't know if that's true, and they don't have the talent really right now to be successful. So home loss to the Raiders, not gonna sit well in the long run for the Patriots this season. Sam doesn't have any feedback on that game. Sam's a Bronco fan, so he doesn't like talking about the Raiders. Can't say anything good about them. So we're gonna move on to the next game. We had the Cardinals at the Saints. I had the Cardinals as one of my surprise teams this year to make the playoffs. I had the Saints as one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the NFL. You know, the Cardinals won the game 2013, but it wasn't by any means a blowout. That was a pretty close game. The Saints looked better than I expected, and yet I'd stay away from them. I mean, Alvin Kamara is the only one maybe you might use from the Saints from a fantasy perspective. Kyler Murray, I love the fact that he ran a lot in this game. He also threw for a couple of touchdowns. Marvin Harrison Jr. caught a touchdown, so hopefully he can build on that. Looks like they have a two-headed monster with James Conner and Benson at running back, and so Benson might be a little bit more valuable than people were expecting coming into the season. But Cardinals beat the Saints 2013. Spencer Rattler didn't look terrible, also didn't do all that much, so we can move on from that game there. Next up, we have what I think was by far the best game of the weekend. Super entertaining. Steelers at Jets. You had Aaron Rodgers, fresh off his time on the Jets, where the Jets fans were so positive going into that era, and then so anti-Aaron Rodgers by the end of it, and frustrated. Justin Fields spent last season on the Steelers, looked great, had them moving in the right direction, and then he got benched for Russell Wilson, and ultimately the Steelers let him go to the Jets. So each team's sort of former quarterbacks going against each other. I think many people expected this was going to be like a 6-3 game. Nobody expected a lot of offense in this game, and it blew up to a 34-32 Steelers win. Just destroying the poor Jets fan base. It just cannot win. Aaron Rodgers comes in, finally has a good game, and it's at their expense. 4 touchdown passes for Aaron Rodgers. late comeback win over the Jets. But I have to say, Justin Fields looked amazing to me. He was running and throwing confidently. I think he's going to be a top 5 type of quarterback the rest of the way from a fantasy perspective. I think the Jets got the offensive brain trust out of Detroit. That offense looked a lot like the Detroit offense from last year. So I think the Jets are going to be okay. I'm curious if the Steelers can keep up this kind of offense going forward. Sam, what are your thoughts on this game?
I thought Justin Fields looked really good, and it was a very interesting game. I think Justin Fields will be a very good quarterback. I like him as a quarterback, and yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers is definitely going to be better than he was on the Jets, and it was a very interesting game to watch.
Yeah, Breece Hall looked pretty good too, so if they can play like that every week. I think last year everybody expected a big season out of him, and it was a huge letdown. So people kind of downgraded him this year, but he looked great in that game. So we'll see how that goes forward. But that was super exciting for both teams. All right, let's move on to the Carolina Panthers and Jacksonville Jaguars. This was not a close game. Jacksonville won 26-10. New coach Liam Cohen bringing a lot of offensive excitement. They featured Travis Hunter at wide receiver early on. He got a little bit of time at cornerback also. Looked good receiving the ball. I think Travis Etienne ran the ball like crazy. Big surprise there. You might want to take a look for him on your waiver wire this week. And Panthers looked awful, honestly. Bryce Young ended last year on a high note. Looked terrible all game long. I don't know that he's going to be able to build on what he did last year. So not a lot to like out of the Panthers offense. I don't know, Sam, any thoughts on this game? Nope. All right, let's move on. Titans visiting the Broncos. Cam Ward's first game, and honestly, it was an ugly game. Both teams did not look good. Broncos won it 20-12. Bo Nix did not look strong. Cam Ward felt a little rushed at times. The entire offense for Tennessee didn't look good. Pollard running struggled. Ridley catching the ball struggled. Ward throwing the ball struggled. Nix also struggled as well. I think it's game one, so both teams will improve, but I didn't think either team played well. Sam, what are your thoughts on the Broncos and the Titans?
I think Cam Ward looked pretty good, just the team around him kind of sucks. I saw Pollard had a pretty good run. I didn't really see much of Tyler Lockett at all the whole game. Calvin Ridley did not look great, and I saw him drop a few passes. And I think if they could improve the team around him, or if Tyler Lockett and Calvin Ridley could get a little bit better, I think they could be really good. Bo Nix and the Broncos. Bo Nix threw a lot of interceptions. Didn't look the best, but this is the same thing that happened last year. He had a very slow start, but then at about week 4, I believe he started to get better. So maybe that's what will happen again this year.
Yeah, what do you think about the running back spot for the Broncos? J.K. Dobbins had a really good game. R.J. Harvey also looked good. He had some big runs in that game. What's your take on that position?
R.J. Harvey had about 70 yards, and J.K. Dobbins, I believe, had 63. I think Dobbins for this year will probably be the running back one until he gets hurt. I believe he probably will get hurt because he's been hurt the past few years. And I think R.J. Harvey will take over after that. Depending on how good R.J. Harvey is, he might become running back one. And I think they both looked pretty good, and definitely a huge improvement over the running back room the past few years.
All right, let's move on to the next game. 49ers at Seahawks. It kind of felt like the Seahawks were in control most of the game, but they really didn't score many points. Sam Darnold, kind of a bit of a concerning clunker. He wasn't able to get the ball to anyone other than Jackson and Smith. Can't say that name ever, but you know who I'm talking
Jackson
about.
Smith and Jigba.
There you go. Thanks, Sam. My translator. Offense just looked slow. I think the running game, I'm not sure they're starting the right guy. I think Zach Charbonnet is the better running back and is more likely to stay healthy. And then the 49ers just did what the 49ers do and got just enough to win 17-13. But something's not right with their training program because it just doesn't make sense how often those guys are getting hurt. Brock Purdy came out of the game injured. George Kittle went on the IR today. He's going to miss at least 4 weeks. Jennings got hurt in that game. Just so many injuries every year. The surprise, I guess, was Christian McCaffrey went in with a last-minute injury designation but managed to play the whole game and seemingly came out of it the other side healthy. But I don't know that the 49ers have a lot of success coming their way with their injury situation. Sam, anything you want to add to the 49ers Seahawks?
Well, the 49ers, of course, are all injured, and I feel like there has to be something wrong either with the way that they train or the way that the coach runs practice. They have to be doing some sort of thing wrong that's causing them to get injured, because your whole team doesn't just get injured every single season, basically. Big injuries. That's just not something that really happens.
Yeah, unless they, won the lottery of bad luck or something. All right, we're going to move on to the Lions-Packers, and the Packers looked great. They were dominant offensively. They were dominant defensively. Jordan Love looked good. They ran the ball well. They played great defense. I think the story of this game was more on the Lions side. They lost a lot of talent in the coaching positions. Both offensive and defensive coordinators left, and they looked a bit lost. Play calling was uninspired. The execution wasn't very strong. I think if I'm looking from a fantasy perspective, a lot of people look at the Lions as an explosive offense that you could count on this year. I'm not sure I would go there. We'll see. It's only week 1, so they have some time to adjust. I think the Packers are actually going to turn out to be a really strong type of defense. So don't really have much more to add there. Solid win for the Packers. Establishing themselves probably as the favorite in the division. Sam has no comment on that game, so we're going to move on. Texans at Rams. Again, not the most exciting game in the world. I guess the most interesting thing was that Matthew Stafford actually played the whole game after being injured quite a bit coming into the year. Not a lot of offensive fireworks there, so you've got to be a little worried if you're looking at the fantasy games for both teams. I think Puka Nacua got banged up a little bit that game, but he managed to come back and play and put a solid line together. Kyron Williams did decently at running back. So Rams pull it out 14-9, uninspiring. We're going to have to see them play again to learn a little bit more about those two teams. All right, we're going to move on to the Sunday night game, which if the Jets and Steelers were maybe the most entertaining game of the day, this one certainly was right there with them. Ravens-Bills. Ravens dominated the game for much of the game, had a 2-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter. I think if you're a Super Bowl contending team and you blow a fourth quarter 2-touchdown lead, you got to be really concerned. But they did. The Bills came back 41-40 with a gutsy last-second field goal for Matt Prater, who they just signed onto the practice squad hours before the game, seemingly. Josh Allen cementing himself as a front runner for MVP, bringing the Bills back. I don't know how they do it with that offense. There's, the wide receivers are not big name receivers. Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Josh Palmer, they did their work. Dalton Kincaid had a touchdown. James Cook had a touchdown running the ball. And the Bills look like they're going to be, solid. I think, Sam, you and I both picked them to win the Super Bowl this year. Then it wasn't looking so hot the way that game played out until the very end, and they pulled it off. Baltimore, you're going to get your fantasy numbers, right? Lamar Jackson had his numbers. Derrick Henry, that guy doesn't age. I don't know how he does it. Zay Flowers did great. People didn't know if he was going to be able to keep the, wide receiver 1 type numbers this year, but he certainly did with 143 yards and a touchdown. So, interesting game. Maybe we'll see these two teams again late in the playoffs this year. Sam, what do you got for me on the Ravens and the Bills?
I think that the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, Bills and Josh Allen, these are definitely the top 2 quarterbacks in the NFL. Mark Andrews did not look great. He missed the pass, dropped it in the playoffs last year against the Bills, causing them to lose the game. I believe he only got 5 yards in this game, and I think once Isaiah Likely's back from injury, he's definitely going to be the starting tight end. And yeah, I think the Ravens are definitely the best overall team in the NFL. They just have a few small things maybe to work out, and that's pretty much it.
All right, let's move on to final game of the week, the Monday night game between Minnesota and the Chicago Bears. J.J. McCarthy's first start at quarterback. Everybody was anxious to see how that went. Chicago Bears, with their new offense and new coach coming from Detroit, can they instill that sort of same excitement? Caleb Williams, year 2, a lot of questions about him. And it was one of those games again. Like some of the earlier games, the Bears kind of had control. They were just chugging along, looked like they were going to win, and then the Vikings explode in the fourth quarter for 3 touchdowns and surprised the Bears with a 27-24 win. I think J.J. McCarthy, the numbers weren't all pretty, but he threw for 2 touchdowns. He ran for a touchdown. That was a tough run. He made the plays when he needed to. So curious to see how that grows from Minnesota. Their defense generally held up well, especially in key moments late in the game. And I'm a little worried. I didn't see a lot of growth from Caleb Williams. His numbers aren't terrible. 210 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions. He ran for 58 yards and a touchdown. So on paper, that looked good. And yet there were some key moments in that game where they really needed a play, and he didn't make it. So curious to see how that progresses. But Minnesota beats Chicago 27-24. Key road win in division in week 1 for Minnesota. They'll take that, especially for J.J. McCarthy's first game. All right, so that's a wrap for this week. Hopefully that was enjoyable for everyone. We'll come back again next week and do the same review. For those of you playing fantasy, it's Tuesday night, so most leagues you're going to have your waivers run tonight. Make sure you get out there. Don't overreact. Don't drop a guy who drafted high just because he had a bad first week. But if you have some injuries, if you have some guys who are already at the bottom of your roster and you could take a high upside guy, take a look for a guy like Travis Etienne. If he's on the waiver wire, you definitely want to snag him. For some reason, nobody took Justin Fields. That's the quarterback you want this week. We'll call it a wrap. Thanks, everyone. Bye.